Welcome to Mindshift. I'm Brandon. Today is another Tuesday takedown, not of people, just of bad ideas, bad arguments, and bad apologetics. And today we're getting that from Dennis Prager. The clip I'm about to show you comes from a conversation called the Exodus series, where there's a whole panel, but most notably would be Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, along with Prager. I would honestly love to just completely deconstruct this entire conversation, but for today's purposes, a little bit shorter, there is a segment of this clip that really baffles me. I think it's disingenuous, it's unfair, it's simply not true, and Dennis Prager should know better. Let me set the stage really quick. It starts off with Ben Shapiro talking about the atheist, how we must be so foolish and naive to think that these men of God have never considered issues like the problem of suffering or evil, or why bad things happened in the Old Testament, etc. And Prager here jumps in, and that's what I'm about to show you, doubling down on the issue and offering proof of how he knows it's actually quite the opposite. So before we watch that, I wanted to show you a couple pictures of the studio that I am building thanks to your guys' generous support. It's really coming along slowly and surely. So thanks to everyone who's given on super chats or through the Patreon. And if you want to contribute to this, definitely feel free to check out the Patreon link in the description below. So enough of my self-promotion. Let's see what Dennis has to say.
I was invited to debate the head of the largest atheist organization in the U.S. in Minneapolis about 15 years ago. And I looked at the audience at one point, about 400 atheists. And I said, would you raise your hand if you ever doubt your atheism? For example, if you've seen your child born, or any child born, or anything like, or heard a Beethoven symphony, do you ever doubt your atheism? Not one hand went up. And then I said, you think we religious people don't question ourselves. You don't question yourself. Because every religious person I have ever spoken to, and that's thousands upon thousands, has acknowledged that they doubt their faith at times and they struggle with it. We struggle, you don't.
Okay, so let's break this down. 15 years ago, first of all, as if he's had no other experiences with atheists since then, he goes to a conference of the foremost atheist leader or group or whatever he said. There's 400 people in the crowd. They're all atheist. He knows this for a fact, and he asks them if anyone has ever doubted. Now, I don't know how he phrased it. I don't know if he remembers how he phrases it. I don't know how much time he gave them to respond. I could see people not sure of the question or if they want to answer, etc. And yeah, maybe this particular group, somehow every single one of them on this particular day, even with a phrasing that was totally fair and him really allowing a safe space for people to give their responses instead of setting up gotcha questions, maybe all of those things actually happened and still those particular 400 had never doubted their atheism. Maybe they were just younger and they were staunch about it. I don't know. I could do a poll right now on my relatively small channel, and I guarantee you I would get a ton of self-proclaimed atheists saying they have doubts. In fact, I'm going to run that poll right now. It's Monday afternoon, and I'll put the numbers up right here. Now, if this worked out the way I think it does, my assumption is that there are plenty of people that have said, you know what? I have doubted my atheism at times. I'll go on record right now saying I absolutely have these moments, these tinges of doubt. Did I get it wrong? Am I being deceived? Have I messed up so badly somehow that I absolutely cannot find the truth and I am lost and stuck? Sometimes it's about the religion that I left. Sometimes it's about if one of these other religions is true. Sometimes it's about, is there just a God that's out there? The cool thing about my atheism is I'm not making a ton of claims. I have no idea if there's a creator. I have no idea how everything began or if there is a greater objective meaning to all of this. But I don't pretend to know. And the claims that have been made about these issues that are falsifiable, I have no problem saying I don't believe in these. And yes, even within those claims, sometimes I have moments of doubt. I'm awestruck when I go out into nature. The love I have for my two wonderful, amazing children is one of the things that catches me off guard the most in this world as well. But I know too much. I've seen too much. I have too much of an understanding of this Bible, of how man-made it is, of how air-stricken it is, of the character of what this God would be like if he actually existed, to throw all of that out the window simply because I see a beautiful sunset or I'm amazed at the love for my family. So yes, I doubt sometimes and less often than I used to, as I've learned more, just like I bet Dennis doesn't doubt at all about if he's wrong about Islam. Maybe it crosses his mind from time to time, but I bet he has enough resources and enough understanding in his head that it's simply not a viable option for belief. So again, depending on the phrasing of this question, I think you're going to get different answers here. But for him to take this thing that happened 15 years ago and hold it as proof that all atheists don't struggle, that we aren't the ones that examine ourselves, and that all Christians do, and this is the second part. part here. He goes on to say he's had thousands and thousands of interactions with believers, and he uses the word all. Every single one of them has had doubts. I also find that equally hard to believe. I know many Christians that have had questions in the back of their minds, but they would never call that doubting. I know many Christians who profess to not ever doubt that God exists. He's too real. He's too personal to them. They know it full well. It is not a faith thing for them. It's not even an evidence thing. They have the assurance of their salvation and of their God. So even to the first point that got them talking about this subject, when Ben Shapiro is talking about how, what, do they just think Christians don't have these doubts? Without trying to fall to the same issues that Dennis is making, I honestly believe that there are Christians that, though they might have some questions or some things don't add up, they never really consider the issues, either because they don't want to, they're being willfully blind to this, or because they've been so heavily indoctrinated that they either think these things do not exist, these problems, these issues, or that there's some kind of a good answer for them through the apologetics that they've listened to. And those are the ones that even know about the issues. I honestly believe many Christians, because of the way they read their Bible or don't read their Bible, because of the sermons that they listen to and the Bible studies that they attend, it's all just pleasantry, nice this, nice that, God is love, forgiving, just, yada, yada, yada. And they're never forced to come face to face with who this God is, if this Bible is actually a good, valid source of truth, what the history is here, and why they should believe it or not believe it. So how much of this is absolutely reversed in this video is astonishing to me. Furthermore, so many atheists that are more like myself that maybe grew up believing and now no longer do, versus someone that's just, say, more secular in general and has never really had to form a full thought or turn away from or choose to believe in or not believe in, etc. But atheists like myself, the reason we're atheist is because we're the kind of people who struggle and doubt, because we're the kind of people that wanted truth and we're willing to follow it wherever it may lead, because we're the kind of people that don't just take what people have said at face value, that dug deeper, that read the Bible probably too much. And you think what? That as soon as we came to this hard conclusion that was catastrophic to the life that we knew, we no longer wanted to question or struggle or deal or doubt? Wrong. That makes no sense, even logically, that we would be the personality type that would deal and struggle so much against this thing that would only cause us harm to lose, at least in the beginning. And then we would just become the kind of people that are blindly confident. It's typically a very humbling experience to wake up and realize that you were capable of believing and professing a thing that is not real. I always get accused of, oh, I left that for a new belief system, atheism. I went from one pendulum swing to the other, and now I have all these other beliefs, and I hold them so staunchly, etc. It's like, no, it is okay to arrive at certain conclusions. There are certain things I know cannot be true, in the same way that 2 + 6 is never going to be 17. But I'm not going to say that math holds no mystery or that I know everything about math, but it is okay to say there are certain things I can know, and of those things I can know, here's what I can believe, or not even have to believe, I'm just simply convinced of based on the evidence alone. But what a ridiculous way to smear the atheist thought process by saying that they are someone who doesn't doubt, who doesn't struggle, who doesn't seek for truth. Meanwhile, all of these healthy religious people are doing nothing but gut checking themselves, looking for the bias in their life, making sure that it's not just about the religion they were born into, they're really doing their due diligence. Do some people do that and still believe? For sure. Do a lot of people who check themselves on all those things end up not believing? You betcha. So I would put it to you that a vast majority of Christians who do believe simply believe because of when and where they were born into whom, because of the church they've gone to, the tradition and the pattern of it all. And it's not a competition on who doubts more, right? I think what they're trying to get at here is that they're standing up for Christians who have done the work. Great. I commend you on at some point trying to check yourself, even if I think you came to an improper conclusion after the fact. I will always root for people learning and digging in. But to say that all Christians do it and no atheists do is ridiculous. And that is what I'm seeing in this video. And it's appalling because Dennis should know way better. But it's a great story to tell around a table of no one else but believers, no one who's going to question you. He could have solved this for himself. Does he really believe this, or does he just like that this thing happened, if it did indeed ever really happen, and now he can share this kind of story to prove his points, to demonize his opponents, and uplift the people who believe like he does? Because if he wanted to find out differently, he could have. He could have posted his own poll. He could have asked anybody. He could have gone to the next auditorium. Too many of you talk to me on a daily basis who say say, hey, I'm an atheist. Hey, I deconverted 3 years ago. But man, sometimes I still struggle with this. Like, what do you do about that? Do you ever have this thought? I know that we exist. And this in and of itself is not a huge problem. But when you get a group of men together like this that are doing this Exodus series that have such reach, such influence, and they, without accountability, continue to just build off each other and say the next thing and one-up each other with the plight of the believer and the pure evil that is atheism, it prevents people who are on the fence, who are doubting, from actually following through, right? Believers always try to say how important doubt is. We should wrestle against these ideas. You're definitely not a good believer if you've never asked why God allowed slavery and other things that I've heard these apologists say right before they tell you that your doubt is good, but if it goes on too long or too far, or you lose your perspective, that you never had the Holy Spirit to begin with, that you were never really saved, that you don't know how to read the Bible, that you're reading the Bible wrong, that you don't have the witness of the Holy Spirit, that you don't have the discernment of Christ. So let me tell you all the things you're doing wrong and the answer you should have arrived at if your doubts were correct. Let me just tell you how disingenuous it is to tell someone to doubt something or that it's good that they doubt it if there's only one conclusion you think is right for them to arrive at. We are all faulty people, capable of insane amounts of bias in getting things incorrect. But telling a group of people that have already uprooted their life from a belief system they used to have because they were willing to doubt and deal with it, that they are the kind of individual who is defunct, who is broken, who is too self-assured and self-righteous to find the truth, while your literal cult continues to build each other up by way of a litany of psychological tools, the hypocrisy is too much for me to explain. So I think that's really all I want to say on Dennis's part. I know that Ben went on to say something in response. Let's listen to Ben's response, do a quick reaction to that, and call it a day.
I mean, it's legitimately embedded in the text, right? I mean, in Genesis, I mean, the name Yisrael literally means struggle with God.
Right,
That's
right,
what it
yeah,
means, right? I mean, and the whole narrative of Jacob wrestling with the angel is essentially Jacob wrestling with the problem of why do bad things happen to good people and how do I deal with that?
Yeah.
And so, you know,
how do I orient myself to the good despite the fact that bad things happen to good people?
Exactly.
Right?
And
why would I maintain faith under those conditions?
When people act as though, you know, religion is supposed to resolve your struggle. No, religion is supposed to make you struggle. The religious way is the hard way. It's the only satisfying way in my view, but it is a much, much harder way, no question. I mean, the easiest thing to say is there's no meaning to anything, so I'm not even going to bother thinking about this ever again.
This Christian persecution complex is baffling to me. It probably existed when it was a new church and when you had Christians actually being martyred. It happens when you're a missionary and you go out into countries that don't allow this and you're acting illegally and then facing the consequences because, you know, you can do whatever you want when you're doing it for the Lord. Who cares about going into a country and respecting their culture and their rules and their beliefs? You know better. Even that, I think, is problematic to say you're the one being persecuted. No one forced you to go do those things, but you want to go be martyred in the name of Christ to show that there is no greater love than the man that lays down his life for his friend, and who better to have be your friend than your personal savior, Jesus Christ. And so go and die for him. You do so because you think the rewards will be insane. That's not martyrdom. That's weighing the pros and cons and choosing what will be best for yourself. And living in America today, there is no con for the believer. You open up a church, you're tax exempt. Where's that for anybody else? Our currency says that we trust in this God. Our Pledge of Allegiance states that we're under God. We swear on Bibles when we need to tell the truth. You are typically respected for your belief. It is a protected belief, by the way, constitutionally speaking. You are not persecuted. But do you know how many people who have left the faith have lost their friends, have lost their families, have been shunned, have lost jobs, have lost opportunities? And this isn't a which of us can be a better victim. I think that people on both sides can have pros and cons for their belief or their lack of belief. It's pretty individualistic at this point. I would never go around and say I'm persecuted for being an atheist, though I do think that I have encountered some things that believers don't have to because of how I believe or lack thereof. But can we just get rid of this script that it is the atheist who has the easiest cushy life because as soon as I don't believe in God anymore, everything becomes meaningless? What was it he said there at the very end?
Religion is supposed to resolve your struggle. No, religion is supposed to make you struggle. The religious way is the hard way. It's the only satisfying way in my view, but it is a much, much harder way, no question. I mean, the easiest thing to say is there's no meaning to anything, so I'm not even going to bother thinking about this ever again.
What atheist is he talking to? Do these people really believe these kinds of things? I question so many things. I question the best way to be a husband. I question the best way to parent and teach my children values that will allow them to succeed in this life and help reduce the suffering of others in this life. I have doubts and struggles, and I'm not complaining. What a privilege to be alive and get to deal with these kinds of things for some of us. For some of us, it is not a privilege. And there's nothing I can do about that in a naturalistic world, but that is something that I think we absolutely should question if there was a creator. So again, there's nuance. Is that too much to ask for? Believe whatever you want to believe, Dennis, Jordan, and Ben, but do you really have to frame all atheists as these soulless, nihilistic, meaningless, devoid of problems and doubt individuals, while you, the persecuted Christian, has always doubted, you're always wrestling with your faith, you definitely never just give in to your confirmation bias or what's easy for you to believe, like the same thing that your entire community believes that you won't get any flack for believing, that will only increase your opportunities of getting the job from the other Christian employer or dating the Christian girl and having a Christian family, getting it blessed by your Christian church where you go every Sunday and Wednesday to the same small groups and prayer groups where you're encouraged and prayed over, and you're in a family that accepts you, not because of who you are, mind you, but because of what you profess to believe that's like them. It's groupthink, like nuance. How very wrong. How silly for this to continue to go on when all of these men know better. If I ever get on a stage like that and I say something just completely like every single believer that I have ever met, I asked a question one time 15 years ago, and here's full proof that the 400 believers who answered somehow answered for all believers for the rest of my life so that I can give this very cheeky and easy answer to prove my point. Don't respect me. Don't support me. Do none of his fans have qualms with this? Do they just not see it? This is the last thing I'll say. Even if you are a predominant figure in Christian circles or people that profess a belief in a God in general, shouldn't it be incumbent on you to try to tell the truth, to try to represent the scenario as realistically as possible? If the end goal is to get as many people to believe in your God for their sake, even out of some altruistic, you really don't want them to suffer hell, you really believe it's a good God, you really believe that he has good things planned for those who know about him and will give their life to them, would it not be better for you to start from an even playing field, to address the world as it really is? Because one of two things are happening here. Either somehow, after all of your years of experience, you don't know what it really is to be an atheist. You really believe them to be evil people deceived by the devil who wanted to be handed over to their sin. You really believe that. That's problem one. And it's going to come from you being unwilling to look at the world around you and let in the real information, because you have this defense mechanism where, wait, if someone else who once believed doesn't believe and it's not some kind of a sin or devil issue, that means it could happen to me, right? That would be scary. And I think that shuts down a ton of the legitimacy that Christians could see within atheists. Or the second is you do know better and you continually purposefully misrepresent the opposition for your favor and those of the people that support and follow you. I'm not sure which one is worse, but one of those two things has to be happening for there to be this big of a disconnect about what the believer believes about the non-believer, about what the Christian perceives about the atheists. So you tell me, Dennis, which one is going on here? And if any of these gentlemen or anyone on this panel or anyone else that wants to talk about these topics would like to have an honest conversation with me, a real atheist who really once believed and really now doesn't, I would love to help represent what we go through, the doubts that we have, the parts of my life that make me think, am I doing it right? If the devil has such a strong grasp on me, I sure still do a lot of study and reflection and contemplation to make sure that I am following truth wherever it leads. He's sure given me a whole lot of leash for a soul that has somehow been so manipulated and stolen away from Christ. I consider often if I'm wrong. I want to know if I'm just being stupid in the other direction now. I really want to know that. I just don't think I am. I don't see the evidence for it. And I'm living my life accordingly. And if new evidence gets in front of me, I will make adjustments. Does that sound sound like some evil, dishonest, meaningless atheist to you? And I'm not special. I think that's how the vast majority of us are. So that's it for today. This will technically be considered a Tuesday takedown, but I'm going to put it in the playlist with Atheism is Not This Confusing or whatever I titled it. Basically where I tried to help people understand what it really means when someone says they don't believe, that it's not filled with all of this other junk that Christians have had to attach to it, to demonize it, to make it evil, to make it scary, to keep people in the fold. So thanks for watching. I'll see you Thursday for our secular Bible study series. And until then, keep thinking. I wanted to personally thank my top tiers of support, my Iconoclast, GVI, Jacob, Jason, Oliver, and Shawn, my Humanist heroes, Jarrod and Kristi, and my Atheist advocates, Anne, Elijah, Rokkit, and Sparky, as well as all my secular scholar patrons. If you believe in this mission or just enjoy watching the content, please consider joining these fine patrons and supporting the channel. Thanks and have a great day.